Goedemorgen allemaal.
Good morning, you all.
Als we om ons heen kijken,
When we look around
dan
us,
zien
we
we
see
onrust
turbulence
in
in
de
the world. The pursuit of self-interest and partial interests makes that people are excluded. This reinforces dividedness and polarization, which is a breeding ground for chaos. Our world needs leaders who can reconnect people and restore harmony. We need mystical leaders. Leaders who see and understand how the world is composed and fulfill their leadership based on this insight. So, what is mysticism, and where do we find those mystical leaders? To answer these questions, we will first discuss what mysticism is. Secondly, we will take a look at a mystic who has experienced mysticism. And third, at what all this means for mystical leadership. Mysticism means that there is a greater reality behind our outer world. This greater reality is a spiritual world in which noble human beings, like Buddhas, but also even further developed beings, are active. This other reality, the spiritual world, is imperceptible for most human beings. We do not experience the influence that emanates from these more developed beings. We are not familiar with it yet. These beings are ahead of us in their development in terms of compassion, cooperation, and wisdom. They have already completed the stage in which we live now and in which we learn our life lessons together. They have already learned those life lessons. And that other reality, they have gained experiences based on which they live and work. Based on their self-conscious experiences in that greater reality, they see through the illusory world in which we live. They understand our difficulties. That disharmony in which we have brought ourselves is like a maze, which we sometimes no longer know how to get out of. These more developed beings can oversee and see through the entire maze of human life based on their greater vision. From their insights and intense compassion, they will exert all their influence to help searching human beings, to support them by showing them the way out of the maze life on earth. Learning to experience that greater reality starts with a vague notion. Maybe you recognize the question, there must be something more. You have an intuition that there is more, something bigger, but you can't grasp it yet. To give an example, on a clear night, you might look at the stars and experience their greatness. You are entirely immersed in the splendor of the stars. You identify with it. You could see this as a gateway, an opening to mysticism, to a greater reality, the very beginning of it. Now we are going to discuss what a mystic is.
A mystic is someone who has experienced or experiencing the greater reality. The experience can emerge by activating our own inner core, the deeper reality in ourselves. And in this phase, in which we as mankind are now, the furthest among us are becoming conscious of it. So, a mystic is someone who has gained experience in the underlying greater reality, that spiritual world. And you should not see those experiences as an accumulation of things and facts about the inner world, but the mystic experiences the coherence and connectedness of life. He knows that the totality works together as one large living organism. He has a deep understanding of the laws of nature, like the law of cause and effect. For example, the interaction between people and the kind of consequences it has. He sees through it. A mystic knows where we, as mankind, come from and what we are growing towards. He lives and works to encourage the process of spiritual growth for the benefit of the totality, based on these insights. Now, we can distinguish two kinds of mystics. Both kinds live and act in accordance with the laws of nature. One kind of mystic strives for peace and bliss for himself. Those are the ones who enter nirvana. Their presence and their influence disappear from the world. The other mystic we call a true mystic. He strives for peace and happiness for everyone. And he will not rest until this goal is achieved. His beneficial influence does not disappear from our world, but remains active always. Such a true mystic works for the unity of all of life, because he sees that one life flows through all this diversity of life. So there is no me and the other, but everything is one. It is this mystic who exercises mystical leadership. We will zoom in further on mystical leadership now.
The mystical leader, based on that idea of unity, that spiritual background of all life, will not rest until all beings have been freed from the maze of the outer existence. He lives in concordance with the laws of nature and encourages others to do the same. He functions as a leader by being a guide for those who are in that maze. He continuously uses all his insights to fulfill that compassionate function. And by doing so, he gives up his own evolutionary development in order to devote himself entirely to the well-being of all life. All his aspirations, his thoughts and actions are focused on the totality, on serving the whole. As a result, he has become a co-worker of a special hierarchy, about which we will tell you more later. For now, we know that mysticism is the reality behind the outer world, the spiritual unity behind all life. The mystic has gained experience in that underlying spiritual world. And the mystical leader lives and works in harmony with the laws of nature to elevate all who are living in the outer life to that more real world. But what is this underlying world based on? What are these laws of nature that a mystic experiences and according to which he lives and acts? We will see that they are based on three fundamental propositions: universality, from the perspective of unity, this means universal brotherhood, and the fact that everything lives or is consciousness. Now first we will discuss the three basic principles. Together they form the basis on which we can explain life: the origin, the structure, and the destination of life. They are keys to solving all life's problems. And the beauty of it is that these teachings are not outside us, but they are about ourselves. We are these teachings. That may be an incomprehensible thought at this moment, but we are going to explain it.
Those three key thoughts are: the first key thought tells us that all life emanates from an unchanging, eternal, omnipresent and boundless principle. Yes, in fact, life is this principle. This principle is beyond our imagination. We cannot comprehend the principle, for it is boundless. But we can approach it by thinking about it. By doing that, our vision of life will expand more and more. We also see the word omnipresence, which indicates that the principle is present in everything. That means that everything is alive. So a galaxy, the sun, the earth and an atom, they are all living beings. Within that boundless principle, we live and move. It is what we are in the heart of our hearts. We are inextricably connected with all other life. The second key thought is cyclicity. In that boundless field of life, there is a continuous coming and going of beings. Just as in oceans the tides follow each other continuously, so in human life, life and death follow each other constantly. With humans we call this process reincarnation, which brings us to the third proposition, the fundamental equality of all beings. Because we all are the boundless principle, we are essentially equal to one another. This means we are equal in our core, but we differ in our development. Because within this boundlessness, each being follows its own path of inner growth. We all express something of that boundless life, each in our own unique way. In short, the three propositions together form the basis of that underlying reality. Everything and everyone is that unity. Just as a drop of the ocean contains everything of that ocean, so every human being has everything of the boundless in him. Everyone is on their way to become aware of this and to connect with that inner core in which we are one. Mystical leadership is based on this perspective. We will take a look now at the universal laws that flow forth from these three fundamental propositions.
Within the boundless, there are universal laws that apply always and everywhere, both in the mystical and the physical world. We call it as above, as below. The way it is at large, so it is on a smaller scale. Growth and cyclicity are examples of such laws. All life has alternating periods of activity and passivity. That is the universal law of embodiment, and for us humans, this means reincarnation. This inseparable connectedness of everything and everyone is a dynamic event. There is continuous movement, which ensures that what one does or refrains from doing always has consequences for the totality, just like the whole cobweb moves when you touch one thread. This is what we call the universal law of dynamic harmony, or karma, the law of cause and effect. And finally, growth. There is eternal growth or spiritual evolution. This universal law of eternal growth means that we are all growing from an unself-conscious divine spark to a self-conscious spiritual divine being. That evolution always takes place collectively, and the further developed is always the source of inspiration for the less developed. The universal laws are the continuous movements or atmospheres of influence that emanate from those more developed beings in which we live and move. And it is the mystic who lives and acts according to these laws. What you may realize now is that behind everything in the universe, behind every manifestation, a force is active, since there is no dead material. We refer to this power as consciousness. In other words, everything and anyone grows from within, from an atom to a Milky Way. Everything is consciously growing in expressing its own dormant, boundless capacities and qualities, incarnation upon incarnation, by interacting with all surrounding life. The slide shows that further developed consciousness inspires the lesser developed. This means that the higher lives in the service of the lower life. Exactly, this is what the true mystic has experienced and expresses through mystical leadership. He will always and anywhere be as a sun, who exerts his influence to inspire everything and everyone. And this principle is a universal law as well. For we shall see that in this boundlessness, the further developed beings create an atmosphere that attracts lesser developed beings. Within this atmosphere, they can live, prosper and grow. All this life naturally forms a hierarchical structure, a unity of life.
Such a hierarchy involves an intimate partnership between all forms of life. All the beings collaborate as a unity, directed by the spirit of a higher consciousness. In their essence, all are equal, but they differ in their development. All living building blocks together form the throbbing structure out of which a hierarchy consists. And in the inspiring atmosphere of a higher consciousness, they exist and develop themselves further. Think, for instance, of the hierarchical structure of a Milky Way. It is composed of many solar systems, which in their turn are composed of various planets. And within our planet Earth, the natural kingdoms have their place in order to develop themselves. There is always life within life. We all are parts, living building blocks of a higher consciousness. And in this boundless field of life, this higher consciousness takes part in an even further developed one. Nothing stands by itself. Everything flows forth from something else. It is the higher consciousness creating the conditions for the specific structure within which everyone, based on previous developed qualities, takes his place in this hierarchy and so expresses their function within the whole. Alright, what have we been telling you regarding a hierarchy? There is always life within life. There is always further developed life, creating the ideal, inspiring atmosphere for the lesser developed life. Wherever it is on the ladder of life, each being is a focal point, a channel or vehicle through which life can flow throughout into infinity. From this perspective, we are all both a teacher and a student at the same time. Everything influences each other. Action will always be followed by reaction, through which everything and anyone will continually learn and flourish. Every being can provide the lesser developed with optimal opportunities for their evolution. All beings in their hearts are the boundlessness. Inherently, we live for each other, through each other, and with each other, whether consciously or unconsciously. All of nature is aiming to stow forward every aspect of life. So this is the direction that we as humanity can follow, to transmute chaos, standing opposite to each other, excluding each other, into a harmonious collaboration.
So far, we have designed a grand display of a hierarchical unity of life. But how can we perceive this unity? It is the focus of our thoughts that determines what we observed from this unity. Out of ignorance, we do not realize that we are this unity. Quite often, we are still focusing on the outside world with all its temptations. We tend to take these illusions for real. We can imagine this focus in our thinking as a flashlight shining into an obscure room. Everything is actually present in the room, but you only see that, what the flashlight enlightens, what you shine your light upon. This does not mean that the things you don't see do not exist. Visible is whatever you are familiar with, that which you gained experience with. All the rest remains covert or obscure, as long as we don't show an interest in the unknown. Everything is already there, but we do not perceive it as long as it lies beyond our consciousness. The focus of your thoughts determines what you perceive from the unity. There is no separation between us and other lives since there is unity. Perceiving this unity means that you reunite with all other life. The moment you start identifying with all forms of life, experience the impersonal love for all beings and things, both on macro as on micro level, life to whatever extent, you will open up to the gateway to the mystical, as we mentioned earlier. This is the window towards experiencing the unity on a deeper level. Finally, we have seen that there is structure, order, and coherence in the whole. From out of the most inner, the heart of the universe, the one life, that inspiring life force flows continuously through all of us, from the grandest imaginable and beyond into our atoms and further. Now there is a very mystical doctrine involved here, which is the hierarchy of wisdom and compassion. This hierarchy is a close partnership of noble human beings, bodhisattvas, Buddhas, and even further developed beings. Their influence stretches out from the heart, the cosmic heart, all the way to our planet and all life evolving here. Their compassion is unconditional because they experience the unity with all forms of life in their hearts. In silence, they continuously cooperate with this one aim, to realize universal brotherhood. Their light shines continuously. They keep their eyes on us, mystically speaking. And when needed, when there seems no way out from the disharmony we created, from this hierarchy, messengers like Jesus, Gautama the Buddha, Lao Tse, Plato, and many others appear on sickly sit moments to help us, to guide the way. Those are the true mystical leaders. Their instructions encourage us to remember the unity and live accordingly. To be a sun, always shining for everyone. Well, this mystical, spiritual world is the foundation for true leadership. We will use this background to enter into everyday practice with Bauke in the next presentation. And this afternoon, Jenny will zoom in on getting to know your inner leader, which enables you to help restoring harmony, so we can live together harmoniously again. Thank you for your attention.
Dankjewel.